Welcome to Butterflies of Wisdom, everyone. As you know, I'm really into positive mindset stuff almost too much. And so today I have Jeff Bogaczyk with me, and we're just going to talk about mindset stuff. That's all he does is mindset coaching. And so, Jeff, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you, Wynn. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. You are a great inspiration to me. I want to say that right at the beginning.
Well, you're welcome.
Go ahead.
Jeff. You're welcome. I was just going to say you're welcome. And now, Jeff, please explain to my audience why you got into the mindset coaching end of it, because I think that's totally cool.
Yeah, that's a great point. So, one of the things that interests me is why we think the way we do. I am the host of a podcast, as you know, called the Mind for Life podcast, and I have a blog, Mind for Life, at mindforlife.org. And one of the things that has always fascinated me is why do we think the way we do, and why do people make the choices and the decisions in their life the way that they do? Have you ever noticed someone who made a decision in their life that you thought, boy, that doesn't really make sense to me? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes. I actually had a friend this morning who was a New York Times bestselling author that has now gone back to nursing. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. If you were a New York Times bestselling author, why didn't you go back to nursing? She couldn't make enough money on her books. But I'm like, stick with it, and you can.
Right. Yeah, when somebody does something like that seems to kind of defy our understanding, you know, my thought process is always, well, why do they do that? Why do people make choices like that? We know that we don't always make choices based on reason, right? It's not all about our rationality, but there's a lot of things that go into it. Our emotions are huge contributors to what type of decisions we make. And then I would also add our past conditioning. So we have had many experiences in our life, right? Some of them have been great experiences. Some of them have been traumatic experiences. Some of them have been, you know, hurtful. And all of those experiences kind of set our mind in a certain place and from a certain perspective. And so those things all kind of contribute to how we make choices and how we make decisions. And here's the fascinating thing about our mind, when a lot of the time we don't realize what's going on underneath the surface subconsciously. Right, so there's all of this stuff that kind of gets packaged in with us, and our brains operate on autopilot. You know, if you think about it, for example, right now, wherever you are, or wherever any of your listeners are right now, they're either sitting or standing or doing something or driving or whatever, and their brain is operating on autopilot. And there's all of this stimuli, all of these senses in our body, and our brain is processing all of this information, and we're not really aware of all of it at once. So, for example, I'm sitting here in a chair, right? But my brain is processing the pressure of the chair against my back, the pressure of my foot on the floor, what I'm hearing, how my mouth is moving. All of these things are happening on autopilot, and I'm unconscious of it. I'm not aware of it. But what I can do is I can turn my mind to focus on any one of those things at any particular time, and then I bring it to my awareness. So all of those past experiences contribute to that type of subconscious, I don't want to call it programming, but more like conditioning. It conditions us when we have to make choices and decisions and about directions in our life or what we want to do. So let me give you an example. I heard a story of a young girl who, when she was 6 or 7 years old, was sitting out in her yard, kind of like almost dozing off in a lawn chair. And her brother decided he was going to play a joke on her. And he collected all of these bugs in a cup. And while she was kind of dozing off, he came and dumped the cup of these insects on her. And for whatever reason, she got really afraid. She was horrified. It was a traumatic experience for her, and she didn't realize it, but that experience really affected the decisions that she would make in her future life about where she would live, about what she would do when she was going outside, about what she would take with her. And she didn't even realize that she was making those decisions based in some way on that early experience she had that was very traumatic for her. And so that's what's interesting to me, is how do we make decisions? Why do we make choices? And then how can we change our thinking? In other words, how can we become aware of some of those things and then be intentional about transforming the way we think in order to do what? To transform our life. And so that's what's interesting to me. That's kind of like the centerpiece for what I do. And our podcast is kind of trying to find out how people think about, for example, success. What have been keys to their success? What have been some of the past experiences that they've gone through that have contributed to, their success, and how people think about failures and obstacles and challenges. And so what I try to do is, in interviewing people, I try to find out that information and try to pull it out so that we can all learn and kind of be a little bit more intentional about what we do in our lives to develop our thinking in better ways. Does that make sense? Have I been clear in explaining that?
Yes, that makes complete sense. That makes complete sense, Jeff. And I've had two traumatic experiences in my life, but one was brought up again this morning, and then as we're doing this interview, one was brought up, and that's the why I'm doing the work that I'm doing, because I want to change the stigma of the way people think about CP.
Right. What would you say, like, have you thought about those experiences and maybe what they may have done to kind of like help you to make decisions one way or another? Has that ever come to your attention at all?
Well, yes, and I'm going to this publicly on the podcast. So here we go. From that experience of losing my mom to aneurysm / viral meningitis, I wrote my first book, which became a #1 bestseller, and on Amazon, and then it could still be found on Amazon, you guys. I Come a Win, and then I am now, as of yesterday, pursuing the track of becoming a fashion journalist, because I want to break the stigma of CP. So yes, those have that one experience of losing my mom has changed my life forever.
Why do you think it is? I mean, because when people have a traumatic experience like that, and I'm assuming, that it was a very kind of a sudden event in losing your mom because of the type of the way it happened. Is that right?
Yeah.
So why do you?
it was sudden because of the way it happened. It went on for, I would say, a good 2 weeks. They tried to figure it out, but they couldn't. So then losing her was sudden. She was fully functioning after the brain aneurysm surgery, but then when she got viral meningitis from hockey players, believe it or not, it all went downhill.
So how long ago was that?
That would have been 7 years ago, in 2010.
Okay, so here's an interesting thing about you that I've noticed just in this talk. That experience, right, for a lot of people would really kind of sideline them. You know what I mean? It would really set them back quite a bit. Why do you think it is that you decided to say, I'm going to go out and write a book? See, there's something different about the way you think and the way that you handle those adversities that helps you to kind of fail forward or to look at challenges and obstacles and traumatic experiences as opportunities to move forward. Why do you think that is?
Because my mom was a big champion of having people understand me and understand that I'm not dumb and understand that I have lights on and understand that I am a fully capable woman in a different way. And she believed in, and my dad does too, they both believed in my capabilities of my gifts and talents. So I wanted to go out and teach the world about cerebral palsy. That's why I wrote this book.
Yeah, see, there's another example. You have a situation where you've grown up in an environment where your parents were very supportive of you. They believed in you. You know, they created, to a certain extent, maybe helped to condition within you a more positive mindset on how you were going to approach life. And see, I don't know, I haven't studied this yet, but I can tell you this, I don't know how prevalent that type of, environment is where people grow up in that type of environment, but I know there are people that do not grow up in that type of environment, that grow up in a very critical environment. In fact, I think the statistic is, in most households, for every positive thing that is said about somebody or a child or something like that, there are 5 negative things that are said. So imagine.
Wow.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Imagine growing up in a household where you are hearing negative things about you from the people that you love and respect the most, and what do? You start to believe it about yourself. When those important... Go ahead.
Go ahead. But I was going to say, no wonder why my kids were so freaked out in 2006 when I started teaching preschool, because I believe that statistic, Jeff, you just gave, and they were like literally freaked out of adults. And then I had a pair of twins who I'm still in close contact with to this day, and they were adopted from Guatemala, and they were so freaked out of adults that I had to talk them out of a tree, basically, because they didn't know what to do around adults. They thought adults were going to be mean, and they thought adults were going to hit them, and they thought the worst of adults.
Right. Yeah. Well, they had most likely experiences that had conditioned them to be able to set those expectations. And we all have those experiences. We all have experiences in our past where people that are important to us, that have a heavy influence on us. So teachers are very influential in children's lives. They have a huge influence simply by nature of the fact that they're spending, 6 hours, 180 days a year with them.
Yeah.
But parents, they have huge coaches. Whenever you have someone that's a figure of authority in a child's life that is in regular contact with them, there's a huge influence. So if you talk to people, they will tell you that, some of the reasons why they made decisions that they did was because their coach said, you would really do good at this, or their teacher said, you should never do that, or their parents said, you should do this. And a lot of times as adults, we just think those things are words. But for kids, when they come from someone that has a big, huge influence on them, they're more than just words. They can be defining narratives that affect, the outcomes of their lives. And so for adults, I think it's important to recognize the power of our words and the things that we say and how influential they are in the lives of children. We just need to be careful about that. And, I know someone who chose their career path because someone influential in their life said, I think you should do this. You would be good at it. And when you have someone in middle school or high school that is kind of struggling and, there's all of this stuff going on as far as, their hormones and trying to find themselves and trying to fit in, and someone influential says, you would be good at this, that's like a lighthouse or a ray or a beacon of hope that they hold on to, and it becomes very powerful, and it starts to take root within someone's mind and thinking. So that's kind of how that works, and you're a testament to that as well.
Well, thank you. I tried to make. Now, what if we have the ER listening to this podcast, the woe is me person, the woe is me, life is terrible. What do we do? How do we convince them that life is not terrible? You just have to face the challenges our higher power gives you and face them head on. What do we do to make them turn around and be ticklish?
It's a great, great question. And I don't know that there is one definitive answer, but let me give you what my suggestion is. There's obviously a big debate between the nature versus nurture. In other words, some people will say it's programmed in our DNA, we can't change, we're determined by all of the past and everything like that, and we can't do anything to affect that. But there's other people, scientists and neuroscientists, that suggest we have this, what they call it is plasticity, not only in our genetics, but also in our brains, that we're not.
I believe it.
Right.
I believe
we're
it.
Not,
plasticity
we're not.
of the brain.
Yeah, we're not prisoners to our past, right? But that we, neuroplasticity suggests that we can change. That if we take strategic and intentional steps to think differently, to immerse ourselves in a different environment. And what I mean by environment is, what are the voices, what are the messages that are surrounding us? I'm a communication professor. I'm just about finished with my PhD in rhetoric and communication. And so the messages that we hear, the words that surround us in our daily life, they have a huge impact on us. So what I would say is, number one, you need to surround yourself with words and messages and voices that are taking you in the direction that you want to go. So you need to find people
with positive people.
Right, positive people, podcasts that are inspirational, that will help you to grow, that will look at things from the perspective that you want to be able to look at things from. So you have to, number one, you've got to kind of change your environment in that sense. And in the same aspect is you need to kind of get away from the negative voices. Okay, so you have to, if there are people that are in your life that are maybe speaking negatively to you, if they're continually degrading you or putting you down or criticizing you, those are voices you want to try to eliminate. And you know what? It's hard because some of those voices are our family members who we love, right? And I'm going to tell you another one. Sometimes those voices are our own voice. So we have to be able to, I guess you might say, reflect. You know, there's a self-awareness there that we need to look at ourselves and ask ourselves, what are we telling ourselves? Because you know what, Wynn? The fact of the matter is, the person we have conversation with the most in our life is ourselves, right? We go through life constantly having a dialogue, a conversation with ourselves about what we're going to do, about what's going to happen, about what's this person cutting me off in traffic, about what am I going to eat, about how this tasted that way, and what am I going to wear, and can you believe that person's wearing that out in public? You know, we have this constant running dialogue with ourselves every day, and it goes on usually outside of our awareness. And by habit, we say negative things to ourselves in that dialogue. Things like, oh, I could never do that, or, oh, I'm not good enough for that, or, oh, they wouldn't ever like me. And those things just are habitual, and they happen based on our past conditioning. So the next step would be to start to take an account of how you're thinking about yourself, about what you're saying to yourself, about what your own voice is speaking to you. And you know what you need to do? You need to change that dialogue. You need to make it positive. You need to be intentional about speaking to yourself the things that will condition you into the direction that you want to go.
Well, thank you, Jeff. And I'm sorry for the negative Nancy out there. You need to start cutting people out of your life who are more negative than you to put yourself in a positive mindset. I've had to do that over the last couple of months. I've had to make huge shifts in my life to get the career I want, and it's going to be a positive change. Although my boss is saying, "Where's my diversity going right now?" Because I'm at a school that has no diversity whatsoever, white on white on white, and it's driving me nuts. And so, but I am essentially, we'll see what happens on Friday. I am essentially walking away from my teaching there and becoming a full-time writer, but we'll see if my boss wants to take on a class about diversity. But I'm so sorry for the negative Nancy's out there, because negative Nancy's not good.
Right. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And a lot of people don't recognize that they are, you know, bound to those negative perceptions in their life. They don't realize, and it's unfortunate because they're a victim to a certain extent of their past conditioning and past experiences. And a lot of what I said happens under the surface of our awareness. We don't realize what's going on. And so for people to really, it's like breaking out of the chains. You know, when you start to realize some of the negative narratives that have defined your life and have kind of, you know, boxed you in or limited you or put you in a certain position, when you start to realize that and you become aware of it, then you can change it. And see, so it's the first step is self-awareness. Starting to look inside yourself and say, what is going on here? And then when you become aware and you say, wow, I'm saying these negative things to myself. Why am I saying that? Well, there's been a lot of people in my past, and guess what? We don't even know a lot of the experiences, right? We don't even recognize a lot of the experiences because they kind of slip from our memory. So really it's about recognizing those things, starting to make intentional steps about what you're going to think about going forward. What are you going to think about when you talk about yourself? What are you going to think about when you talk about your future? What are you going to think about when you talk about the possibilities, right? Because if there's one thing I've learned from talking with people on my podcast is that if you can think it, it can become a reality, right?
You can make it happen. If you put it out to the universe, it can. Right. You can make it happen.
Yeah, but if you never think it, I promise you, it will never happen.
It won't happen. It won't happen. No.
Absolutely.
It won't happen. Now, Jeff, where can people find you? And then, Jeff, I asked you to ask me 4 questions. 2 of them you have texted me, which I'm about to announce live. And then the other 2 I wanted you to surprise me with. So here we go. I get to play podcast guest on my own podcast, and then we will figure out where can people find you, and then we'll go straight into those questions.
Okay, perfect. And I'm going to tell you, this is what I've been really looking forward to, is to hear from you, actually, when so where people can find me, my website is mindforlife.org. That's mind, F-O-R, life.org. I host 2 podcasts. The first one is called the Mind for Life podcast, and as I mentioned, it's on iTunes and all of the platforms. It's about personal development and learning how people think about success, failure, obstacles, and challenges, and then how we can learn from that. And the second podcast I host is called Wide World Stories, and it's a podcast where I interview people who travel the world and just talk about their experiences, some of the best places on the planet that they visit, and some of their great travel tips. I love to travel. I love to experience new cultures and new people, so that's a passion of mine. So that's where people can find me. I'm on Twitter. You can follow me at Jeff Bogaczyk. And if you're interested in more on personal development, I send out a weekly personal development newsletter/resource. You can sign up for that newsletter on the website, mindforlife.org, and just click on the Join Us button up on the top menu. So that's pretty much that. Now let me ask you the questions that we talked. I'm going to give you the first 2, and then I'm going to give you some surprises. I'm going to try to catch you off guard. First of all, Wynn, how do you think about success? Right? That's what my podcast is about, is trying to figure out how people think about success. So how do you think about success? How do you define success for you?
Well, as I told you last night via text, one of my ultimate dreams is to be a New York Times bestselling author. So now I need to get into the successful mindset of a New York Times bestselling author, and just goes, ha ha, I'm sure you do. And we're going to make that happen. But I believe in success. The people I impact with my story, if I'm touching one person with my story and instead of 1,000 people, I'm happy.
Well, that's wonderful. And you know what? That really resonates with some of the most successful people that I've talked with. For them, it's not as much about accomplishments as much as it is about how they can affect and impact and help other people. So that's a very great and very admirable characteristic and quality in you. Now let me ask you this question. What do you think has been the biggest key to the successes that you've had in life? If you look at all the areas that you've been successful, maybe your achievements, what do you think has been maybe the one constant that is found in all of those things?
Well, my dad actually started teasing me the other day. He goes, what if your natural name was Luz? How would you think of your life? And my natural name is not Luz, by the way. It's spelled W-I-N. So I always think of my life as a winning life, despite my cerebral palsy. And so he said it as a joke, but I'm like, how does a name, that makes me think when you asked me that question, how does a child's name impacts their mindset?
That's a great question. And you know what? That's a very a deep thought. What if your name was not Win? You know, because names, they mean things, right? They define us in certain ways. And so for you to have been given the name Win and what that means, I think that's pretty interesting. How, and you know, you might explore that. How has that affected your thinking? Because guess what? Everything you think in life is colored in some way by your name, by who you are, right? And so, you know, for you to be able to define yourself through the name Win is a big thing. And we all have to find ways to define ourselves and to not let other people define us in ways that we don't want to be defined. And so that's pretty interesting. Yeah. I'm glad you shared that. Okay, are you ready for this one? This one is one that we didn't talk about.
I'm ready for the curveballs. I'm ready for the curveballs, Jeff.
Win. So you have a disability, and I want you to tell us, how do you think about that disability? How do you process that? What goes through your mind when you think about the fact that, you know, that you have that disability?
Well, as I said, I've been very, very lucky from day one that I was given the name Win, and yes, that's my paternal grandmother's name on my mom's side, and I have used Win to my advantage. I'm actually coming up with a podcast, Ask Win, based all about having my fan base ask me questions about cerebral palsy. I'm slowly working on that when I quit my full-time job. And so how has cerebral palsy defined me? Well, I try not to let cerebral palsy get in my way. Some days it's easier than others. So my mindset about cerebral palsy is I have to slow down and a little. I think, okay, cerebral palsy is getting in my way today, but 9 times out of 10 I can get out of a funky mood because of cerebral palsy. So I try not to let the mindset of cerebral palsy get to me too much.
Do you find that, because a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but there are people, and I don't know how many or how few, but there are people who look at, who don't really look at their disability in a positive way, but look at it as a negative thing, and they will, you know, take the role of the victim and, oh, look what happened to me, and this is what happened to me, and things like that. Do you find yourself being maybe, you know, sometimes drawn into that type of thinking, or have you found a way to say, I'm going to get beyond that, I'm not going to think in that way, I'm not going to let this define me in a negative light? And how have you done that?
It's interesting because I coach so many people. People rely on me with disabilities. People rely heavily on me. I don't know why that is. But it's interesting because when another disabled person jumps on my ship and I have to talk to people with a tree sometimes. Like this morning, I had to talk a person down out of the tree. Her mom is going through a medical emergency right now, and I had to talk this person down out of the tree because she not only has diabetes, but doesn't have the positive mindset to deal with diabetes. And so it's interesting because I am on the outside looking in a sense. Even though I have a disability, I am on the outside of the disabled population because of the advantages I've had in my own life, and because of I don't really see myself with a disability. I mean, I grew up with able-bodied kids, and still my classes on my journalism track are full of able-bodied kids. They don't even know I have CP yet, and so I admit that, and they're not going to give a hoot because they just think I'm wonderful doing what I'm doing. So it's interesting because the negative mindset sometimes gets me, but I'm pretty much positive, and this is how I act off podcast too. I am such a positive person that I'm almost too positive.
Well, that's great. When you are a great inspiration to me, and I appreciate you having me on this podcast today, and it's been a great joy for me.
I do too, and I hope my listeners get a lot out of it. They're going to be like, oh, great, when is that her mindset stuff again? Oh, great, here we go. The positive mindset stuff. They don't want to hear it from me. Of course, you guys do, and I appreciate Jeff's support, and I'll have Jeff's information in my show notes, and you guys just keep trucking along and try and make yourself a positive mindset. Beautiful day by the time that you guys hear this. It will be Thursday, so you guys will hear this one day after recorded. But Jeff, I really appreciate you coming on, and I think we had an impactful conversation, and I hope my listeners gained something out of it. And this podcast has been sponsored by Grace by Grit. Grace by Grit is a clothing line out of California. They're giving you 20% off when you type in the code Extra Butterflies. So if you need a positive mindset to go work out, you just type in the code Extra Butterflies at gracebygrit.com, and that discount code should pop up, and all that information will be in the show notes. And I just want to say, if you need another positive boost, go look at audible.com for the Mosaic of CP. The Mosaic of CP is yours truly latest book and mine, and it's out on Audible. So when you go to the gym, you can at least listen to my book if you're not listening to my podcast. And please, 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 please share this podcast out so we, as a community of butterflies of wisdom, can make this podcast even bigger and better. Thank you.
Thank you.